chronic stress and duress causes a drop in cellular or causes an increase in cellular deficiencies because we're pulling nutrients from the cell in order to counteract what's happening within the high blood glucose. And thus, we end up leading into some of chronic illness along the way.
Welcome to the Next Level Income Show, where it's our goal to take your income, your investments, and your life to the next level. I'm your host, Chris Larson. If you haven't yet, get a copy of our book for free at our website, nextlevelincome.com. That's www.nextlevelincome.com. Just click on the book link, and I'll even send you a copy if you put your address in. On today's show, we have Justin Roethlingshoefer. Justin is a co-founder of Own It Coaching, a multiple seven-figure coaching company. As a performance coach in the NCAA and NHL through Own It, he has made the same ecosystem that is usually only available to the best athletes in the world now available to you. Utilizing best-in-class testing, technology, and coaching, he and his team have been able to transform the health and lives of hundreds of thousands of leaders throughout the country while empowering them on their journey and making the complex topic of health simple, actionable, and personal. He is a speaker and the host of the Own It Show podcast. He's also the author of 3 other best-selling books, including The Athletic Performance Blueprint and Own It. Today, he's going to come on to talk about The Power of Ownership, his new book on how to redeem your health, live life by design, and break the relentless pursuit of normal. Justin, great to see you again, my friend.
Chris, it's so great to be here. I know we were in person, not a couple of weeks ago out in Arizona, but it is, as always, so good to see your face.
Yeah, man. Likewise. So I want to begin by telling a little bit about the story, how we met. We met a couple of years ago, about 2.5 years ago in Nashville, Tennessee, just like this. You were on Zoom. We were coming out of COVID. And
that's true.
Yeah. Well, and for me, I was coming right into COVID. So I was like, I heard you talk and I was like, this guy's awesome. I need to talk to him. I set an appointment for the next week, Wednesday. I found out Tuesday, thanks to my Oura ring, before I was even sick, that I had COVID. I canceled every meeting the rest of the week except for you, Justin. And I'd like to say that was the start of a beautiful friendship. And I learned a lot working with you. And I'm super excited to have you on to share a little bit about your background. You've been on the show before, but also your new book that's coming out in a week.
Yeah, super excited about it. It's I mean, I know I've told my story on here before, just as like how I got to this point. And for those that are kind of new or just kind of getting introduced to myself, born and raised in Canada, was a hockey player and really just became obsessed with the human body when I was 12 years old. My father said to me, son, talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid. And it was at that something clicked in my mind. That really drove me to want to understand more about my body. What do I need to know about this thing so I can make better decisions about the habits, the behaviors, the things that I need to do consistently that will compound into success over the course of time. And so at 13 years old, I started to track my heart rate while I was training, heart rate while I was sleeping, was wearing a heart rate monitor, was wearing a pulse oximeter, was wearing a brainwave sensor to measure how my sleep waves were operating. Like, I was deep into this thing, Chris. And this is, you have to remember, this is 1998. So a lot of this stuff was very foreign to people still.
Very new too, yeah.
And had, while everyone else was reading comic books, I was the kid reading medical journals. And so this was kind of just like my journey that brought me then down to the States on a hockey scholarship. I got a couple undergraduate degrees, got my master's degree, did my postgraduate doctoral work in heart rate variability and sleep. And then a career in the National Hockey League and the NCAA as a health and performance coach. And what I noticed during my just shy of 12 years between those two spaces was that we had all of this data, and it became like an arms race where people wanted to put this front on. It was almost like a facade of, we're a high performance culture, we're a high performance facility or high performance department. Just because we had the GPS systems, the heart rate monitoring systems, did the blood tests, did all the stuff, but it just sat on a shelf. And at the end of the day, we all ate the same, we all trained the same, we all recovered the same, we all slept the same, we all traveled the same. There was personalization, no customization, no individualization to the journey of what this was all about. And this makes no sense. Like, why are we doing this, but yet not customizing it? And so that was really my contribution, I would say, to an industry to pull us into the data age of allowing data to drive decisions. And In 2019, at having been in the league for about 10 years, um, for the first time, I started to feel like not well. I started to
Mm.
have brain fog. I started to not sleep very well. I started to bloat anytime I ate. I had headaches that just would be debilitating that I'd never had before. And mindfulness and keep in mind during this time, Chris, I was still training as an elite athlete in the CrossFit side of things and the High Rocks and DECA side of things, like adventure racing, marathon running. Like I was extremely fit. And so I went into our doc's offices and hey, like, can you do something is not right. They looked at all my numbers. They looked at everything. They said, oh, you're healthy. You're good. Everything's great. And then I went to functional medicine docs and naturopaths. They gave me all of their special antidotes, their protocols, their supplement routines. Still ended up being worse than I was before. And I still remember I was in Chicago, had just finished a morning skate. I was back at home at the hotel doing a workout, picked up a medicine ball. I turned around and the room spun and I fell down. And the last thing I remember was waking up on a bed face up. And I said, I can't do this anymore. Well, I went and I got a colonoscopy and an endoscopy, and they found four polyps the size of my thumb, all precancerous in my colon, and a ulcer the quarter precancerous in my stomach. And I was 32 at the time. And he said,
Wow.
if you hadn't come in, you would not have seen your fifth birthday. It would have
Wow.
been that detrimental. And so it was at that moment that I realized that what I was doing for these NHL athletes was not an athlete problem I was solving, but rather a human problem
Yeah.
because we either earn our health or we earn our illness. And for me, even though I thought I was healthy, earning my illness because of how I was operating and things that I was doing that were not personalized. I was guessing and copying what others needed to do rather than customizing based on what my body was asking for in the season, in the moment in which I was in. And that was what I needed to get out into the rest of the world.
No, I love that. And, I went through a similar journey, Justin, where, back in 98, I was racing bicycles. I was a little older than you. I was in college. So it was a little more normal for me to be reading medical journals. But
Yeah.
every Saturday I'd get up and I'd read. That's what I would read to educate myself and measuring heart rate. We didn't have power meters quite yet back then in cycling, at least not to the level they are ubiquitous today. And still with all that knowledge and being a biomechanical engineer and being obsessed with performance, it still took me years to figure it out. And it came together for me before we met. I started working with another group in 2016, and this is when around the time that genetics based or personalized medicine came to be. And I still hear it. I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and he's like, yeah, not every diet works for everybody. And, it's like, oh, my buddy's here visiting Justin, and he eats like a carnivore, and his blood work is phenomenal. And you know me, kind of my genetics and how my body works. I'd probably have already had a heart attack by now if I ate like him for the past six for the past 6 years. I've eaten very different. Can you share a little bit about how the dramatic cost of genetic mapping coming down has really impacted what you do and how you weave that into Own It and the practice that you run?
Yeah, so I talk about it in a few different ways. Number one is that people blame the medical system for not being able to operate at a higher level in preventing their health. And I say we have to stop blaming the medical system and we have to actually look in the mirror and take ownership of what's there because the medical system does exactly what it was designed to do: fix things that are broken and make money. It does both of those two things very, very well.
Yeah,
And
exceedingly well in the U.S. Yeah,
we as consumers want it to be proactive and prevent illness. But that's not the medical system's job. That's like asking for an apple from an orange tree. It's our job to take ownership of our health. And that is where it starts. And so it doesn't start with guessing what you need to do. It doesn't start with copying what somebody else is doing. It doesn't start with complying with what you see on Instagram or what maybe your doctor says or the medical expert who looked at you for 30 seconds says. It's how are you customizing? And this is where it comes down to really, for me, 5 different data points that you have to know. And if you don't know these five
So,
data points,
so five different, sorry, you cut out there for a second. So there's five different data points you have to know. I want to make sure I underscore this for the audience.
correct, five different data points that you have to know, with your first two being of the highest priority. Number one is you have to know your heart rate variability. You have to understand heart rate variability. If you understand heart rate variability, you will be able to understand how your body's handling stress and strain. Heart rate variability, otherwise known as HRV, is a metric that can be garnered or found from any wearable device. Whoop, Aura, Fitbit, Apple, Polar, they all have them now. Forget the algorithms that they throw at you, but just look for raw HRV. A higher HRV that your body is adapting well to the stress that you're under. A low HRV means that you're not adapting well to stress. Mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, the body doesn't know the difference.
So let's back up one quick second, Justin.
Yep.
HRV, heart rate variability. That's a
Correct.
measure, and you've done. I've heard you explain this before. What is that a measure of? What's that exactly measuring? So if I have my Whoop on, or my I'm sorry, my Aura band on, or a Whoop on, and it says, "Oh, your HRV's 50," like
Yep.
what is that a measure of?
So what that's looking at is it's looking at the time difference in milliseconds between successive heartbeats. So,
Okay,
Chris, if your resting heart rate is 60 beats per minute and
hmm
my resting heart rate is 60 beats per minute, still math would say, oh, your heart rate is beating at 1 beat per second and my heart rate is beating at 1 beat per second.
sure.
But that's not how our body functions.
Okay.
What happens is your body only beats, or your heart only beats when it has to. So if you're adapting really positively to stress, your heart might have beat at 972 milliseconds, 817 milliseconds, 1.1 milliseconds, 917 milliseconds. So variance in milliseconds, but a large number. For me, I'm not adapting well to stress and strain. And my nervous goes, oh my gosh, we just have to keep Justin alive. So we're going to start to regulate out these beat cycles, which looks like maybe 910 milliseconds, 905 milliseconds, 855 milliseconds, 906 milliseconds. So much closer. And so the variance is much less. So that is
Interesting.
why we can start to look at how you're adapting to stress and strain, utilizing heart rate variability. And I'm going to take you on a little journey here to understand why here in a second. Chronic stress creates chronic deficiencies. So this leads us to number two. You have to know your cellular deficiencies: vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. Now, this is not your regular everyday run of the mill blood testing that you get from 10x Health or Inside Tracker or your medical doctor. This is a cellular micronutrient panel, because what's available to you in your blood serum is not available for your body and your cells to actually use, because it can't absorb it necessarily.
Right.
We need to understand what's actually in the cell. And so every blood work that you're getting is just looking what's in the serum, not actually what's in the cell. And so that's what we need to understand.
Is
And
this
how do you,
new? Is this new? Because this kind of blew my mind. I was just looking at mine here recently, and um, so this is what's unusual to me, Justin. Some numbers that we see on tests, it's like, oh, your testosterone's good, this level of B vitamin's good, vitamin D's good. But what you're saying is you actually need to know what is getting into the cell, what is being used by your body, right?
that's exactly it.
Like
This
being
is
in a
exactly
library,
it.
not opening the books. It's like, what good are they doing you?
I give the example often of, if Chris, you have $5 in your bank account, but you have $1,000 bill to pay, and you're like, well, I don't have an extra $500, but I have a business that's making 500, or that's making 5 million, and I have um, uh, 50 investments that are worth major equity, have real estate, but you don't have access to that money. And so you still have a bill to pay that your body does, that you don't have money to pay for. And so the
Gotcha.
same thing here with, you may have vitamin D in your blood, you may have vitamin C in your blood, you might have iron in your blood, but it's not getting into the cell. And so why that bothers me with how the system works, whether it's functional medicine, whether it's naturopathic, whether it's something like Inside Tracker, or even your medical system, is at the end of the day, they are just looking again at a blood test that's looking at what's broken, because they can fix what's broken.
Right.
looking at truly what can be prevented,
Yeah.
which is looking at the cellular level. Once you go to the cellular level, that is how your body is operating and functioning off of. And so once you're at that level, it's only at that point that you can get truly customized in your nutrition, because it's no longer, hey, what diet's the best for you? It's no,
Right.
what nutrients are you missing? And
Yeah.
that's the foods that we're going to focus on. It's only at that point can you get really focused on supplementation, meaning how can we compound and custom formulate a supplement for you so that we can replenish and ultimately reverse the cellular deficiencies that are there. And it's amazing how we ultimately start to feel better, because chronic stress creates chronic deficiencies, which create chronic symptoms. Symptoms like brain fog, symptoms like headaches, symptoms like fatigue, symptoms like weight gain, symptoms like inability to sleep that we consider normal.
Yeah. Which is
And those
that's the real problem, right?
and those chronic symptoms lead to chronic illness. And that's why our mission at Own It is to the leading cause of death in the United States, which is chronic illness, from 71% down to less than 50 by the year 2030. And we can only do that if we can properly educate and equip people with the data necessary. So heart rate variability is number one. Cellular deficiencies is number two. Remember, if we talk about the sequencing, chronic stress, chronic deficiencies, chronic symptoms, chronic illness, if we know HRV, we can interrupt our chronic stress. If we know chronic deficiencies, then we can interrupt the deficiencies that are here, which we can then alleviate the bottom two. So, which is why I said the first two are the most important, which now leads us to number three, which is going to be VO2 max. If you know
VO2
your
max.
VO2 max, which by definition, it is how efficient your body is at utilizing oxygen. And so if you have a higher VO2 max number, Peter Attia says it all the time, further away from death, because you're going to be fitter, you're going to
Like that.
be able to absorb oxygen better, you're going to be able to eliminate toxins better. And you probably, again, this is just the correlation that's there. You probably have a lower body fat index. You probably have a higher muscle mass index. You're probably more aerobically fit. All things that, again, go into health and longevity. So a higher VO2 max. If you have never measured VO2 max before, take your max heart rate,
Mhm.
divide it by your resting heart rate, and multiply it by 15.3. That's a great estimator of what your
Interesting.
VO2 max number is. And it's actually much more effective than even looking at a lot of the algorithms from your wearable devices,
Really?
because a lot of it just goes off the estimated max heart rate number, which a lot of them aren't very accurate in measuring.
So
So
max divided by resting
yep, is
times
15.3.
15.3. Yeah,
Yep.
that's pretty close to mine. Yeah, interesting. And
And you
maybe that's how the Garmin evaluates it. I'm curious how it figures that number out. But
And so then the other thing that happens off of that is you should then be able to go off a base number and say, hey, for a female, you should have a number 38 or greater. And
okay,
for a male, you should have a number of 45 or greater. That's what you should be
gotcha.
shooting as like bare bones minimum, in order to like, hey, this is the baseline of where I need to be above.
Interesting. Now, so I can for all you cyclists out there that are fans of the show, those miserable VO2 intervals that we've all done for years and years, like 2 minutes to 6 to 8 minutes, or is that a reasonable range for an effort repeated, like for those VO2 intervals? Does that sound right?
For sure.
They're
Yep,
miserable. They're
100%.
miserable. Almost can't do them outside. Running into a car head first or
Yeah, because
cross-eyed.
you start to just start to like
I
drop the
got to do
hammer.
them inside, man. Yeah. My wife, Justin knows my wife. So she comes down one time, Justin. I got my trainer set up in my climate controlled basement. It's like 55, 60 degrees. I got a big fan blowing on me. I got drool coming out of my mouth, snot coming down my face. And she walks in and I stop and I look and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I'm working out. I'm doing like intervals. And she's like, "This is what you've been doing down here?" She's like, "You're crazy."
So funny. Our wives may never really understand the reason for pushing to that level.
I don't think we want them to. I don't think they want them to.
So funny.
We'll let them go about
That's right.
believing that the world is a nice shiny happy place.
It's so funny.
Are you a high-income business owner or professional earning 2, 300,000 or even more a year, but still feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck? Are you comfortable working until you're 65 or 70 to retire, or do you want to achieve financial independence and live life on your own terms? You could join myself and Matt Four and learn how we both became financially independent in our early 30s. We will teach you how to make, keep, and grow your money, teaching you strategies to maximize your earnings, keep your income that you've earned through tax strategy and legal structures, and ultimately teach you how to grow it by determining your personal investing strategy, as well as teach you how to analyze investments so you can grow your passive income to the point to live life on your own terms. Our coaching clients reliably do this in 7 years or less. To learn more, check out our coaching program at nextlevelincome.com/coaching. That's nextlevelincome.com/coaching.
So then we go into number 4. And we get into number 4, it's sleep quality.
Sleep quality.
So when you think about sleep quality is broken down into 4 different stages: a light sleep stage, a slow wave sleep stage, a REM cycle, and a wake cycle. And quality sleep is defined as the amount of time spent in slow wave and REM out of the total amount of time slept. So we want to
slow
be
wave is deep. Is that what people call deep sleep, Justin?
slow wave and deep sleep, correct?
Okay.
Yep, slow wave and deep, and then you've got your REM cycle. So
REM
those are
cycles.
your two different ones.
Okay.
When we think about the quality of your sleep, we want to be about 40 to 50% of your total sleep time in one of those 2 stages. That equates to quality restorative sleep. Now, if we're getting that amount of time in, that means that we are going to be having higher levels of mental and physical repair. This means we're going to have a greater ability to car wash the brain. The lymphatic system is 90% more active during those stages of sleep, which means the car wash for the brain is actually happening at an elevated level, eliminating toxins.
I love car washes.
I do know you love car washes. Storing up the memory from the day before, all the positive things that we're looking for. And then number 5 is a steady blood glucose. So a steady
A1C.
blood glucose.
Is that right?
Yep. HbA1c. Yep.
Okay.
HbA1c, fasting glucose number. And then the reason is because if we actually look at, we're the only country in the world, Chris, that does not call Alzheimer's actually what it is, Alzheimer's and dementia. Alzheimer's and dementia is type 3 diabetes and inability to control
I remember
blood
when I
sugar.
first heard that. Yeah, like 15 years ago. I was like,
Yep.
can you now
Yep.
explain that? Explain that for listeners, because I've read a lot about this. When I first heard it, I was like, whoa, that makes a lot of sense. And it's actually what got me really interested, because my grandfather, who died at 95, he lived very long, healthy, but he had Alzheimer's the last couple of years of his life.
Yep.
So other countries and some professionals in this country call it type 3 diabetes. Why is that?
Yes. Because at the end of the day, as when we go back to like what actually causes Alzheimer's and dementia, it's a breakdown of the synapses within the brain to actually process information. And when you have increased blood sugar, it decreases the ability for those synapses to actually maintain and repair. And when we're in this process of constantly
increased sugar, now that seems a little counterintuitive, because I've heard like our brains run on sugar, but you're saying if there's too much sugar, it does not allow our synapses to fire.
Not sugar, a higher blood glucose level, which it's different. So yes, it does need carbohydrate in order to operate and run. But when your blood glucose is constantly irregulated, the toxicity level in your body also increases. And so when the toxicity level increases, it creates an issue for your brain to ultimately source through that and get rid of a lot of the toxins that are building up. And so if we start to think about this as well, we have to go down like the cyclical effect, because it's not, oh, I have high blood sugar, I'm going to get diabetes, but it's chronically long term. Because what happens when we have high blood glucose levels, we actually don't get into deeper stages of sleep. Why don't we get into deeper stages of sleep? See how all of this is connected.
Yeah.
When high glucose levels are there, we actually don't get into deeper stages of sleep. We don't get into deeper stages of sleep because our body goes, oh my gosh, glucose is high. Chris must be in trouble. We have to keep him awake. And so if we keep him more awake, we actually don't get an increase in HRV. We don't get the restorative sleep. We don't get that level because our body's constantly under stress. Chronic stress and duress causes a drop in cellular deficient, or causes an increase in cellular deficiencies because we're pulling nutrients from the cell in order to counteract what's happening within the high blood glucose. And thus, we end up leading into some of chronic illness along the way, whether that's obesity, whether it's anxiety, whether it's diabetes, whether it's a heart attack, a stroke, type of Alzheimer's, dementia, COPD, something of that nature. And so as we continue to go down this road, people might be listening to me talk and go, oh my gosh, Justin, those 5 are so hard and so difficult to get going and to be implemented. I don't even know where to start. I want to simplify it for you. I want to make it so easy, because how do you start and where do you start going? Okay, so number one.
Yeah, and look, real quick before you dive into that, I think it can be so overwhelming. And if you're listening, this is like when you jump in the car for the first time and you've been looking at paper maps, and what
Yeah.
Justin has done, I like to say it's like the Google Maps for your health. You
Yeah.
just open up the app and you look at it and you're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be going and what I'm supposed to be doing.
I appreciate that. That's really what we always tried to do. I say with this book, The Power of Ownership, I hope and I promise one thing of each. So my hope is that you feel empowered and you feel equipped to take ownership of your health in a completely different way than you've ever done before. That is my hope. My promise is that I make it simple. My promise is that I make it understandable. My promise is that I make it personal. My promise is that I make it intentional. And so that you leave feeling better than when you came in. You leave feeling different than when you came in, because you now, for the first time, have hope that you can actually do this. And so in saying that, okay, where does somebody start? Number one, you can go get the book, like, and be able to like actually walk yourself through as a manual. However, I want to equip you with some resources even before we go down that road. And it's really three things that you need to do. Number one is you get some form of wearable device. My favorite is either the Whoop or the Oura Ring. Why? Because you now have something that you start tracking these biometrics with. Remember what I said at the beginning: data drives decisions, data determines direction, not feelings, not emotions, not opinions. We leave all those to the side. All the health experts out there are having the wrong conversation right now. They're trying to prove that their philosophy is better. They're trying to say that their diet is better, that their supplement is better, that their exercise routine is better, that their sleep mask is better, that their mouth tape is better. Like, you can go on and on and on and on. Well, it doesn't really matter. The thing they're missing is what is best for you.
For you.
And they're not
Absolutely.
providing
Yep.
any data to help garner where people should actually be starting. And so where I want people to go is I want people to be empowered and equipped, and they should take ownership of their own data. So have a Whoop band, have an Oura Ring, something that starts to measure sleep quality and heart rate variability. And automatically, once you have these two things, you can calculate your VO2 max. So just by doing one thing, you can get 3 of the 5 things to understand where you're at. Just by doing one thing. That doesn't mean you're going to understand what's there, but now at least you have the information to start. The second thing, get your cellular testing done. It's like, okay, Justin, where do I do that? Ownittesting.com is a super easy place to go and do it. Ownittesting.com will send the us right to you. We make it super quick, super easy. We're the only testing and supplementation company in the world that you can use your HSA and FSA dollars. We wanted to make it super affordable for people, so that there was never a barrier for people to actually get the right, proper information that's going to service them, so that we can now help you get personalized and customized in your nutrition, personalized and customized in your supplementation, and personalized and customized in the direction you need to go. So that's number 2. And number 3 is to get a coach or a team around you that makes it simple. Because just by getting the data, you're going to start to empower yourself and go in a direction that you need. Just by starting to look at it and start to experiment. Like, drink one night, don't drink the next. Look at your heart rate variability and sleep quality. It's going to make you aware to things that you weren't before. Go
Absolutely.
in the sauna
Yeah.
first thing in the morning versus wake up and have a coffee and go right into your day. Look at heart rate variability and your sleep quality. It's going to start to awaken you to the choices and the habits and behaviors that are there and how they are impacting you in these, so you can start to become intentional with what you're doing. The most successful people in the world, Chris, and this is what I've learned around being around a lot of these people. I'm not just talking financially. I'm talking about successful in their health, successful in their marriage, successful in their relationships, successful in their finances, successful in their businesses, successful in life holistically. The thing that every single successful person has in common is they're extremely intentional.
Yes.
And if you can be intentional with these things and use data to drive decisions, just like you use data to drive decisions on investments, just like you use data to drive decisions on your home purchases, just like you use data to drive decisions on your financial portfolio, just like you use to drive decisions in your business, your health will exponentially change.
I love that. And just like you have a financial dashboard, like having a Whoop strap, I think it's got a phenomenal dashboard on there. It makes it very easy. I wore a Whoop, I wore an Aura, I wore a Garmin for what was it, 6 9 months? I forget how long it was, Justin. I got
Yeah,
all the
nine
data.
months.
I got all the data. I had to pare it down a little bit. But a quick story for the audience. I know I told you this. When I first started going through this testing, I found out I shouldn't eat high levels of animal fat. Again, like I was
Yeah.
alluding to, it's not good for me, not good for my brain, not good for my body composition. So I started to move some stuff around. I started eating more coconut oil because I thought, hey, this
Mm-hmm.
is this is good. I go back 3 months later. My nurse looks at me and says, "What are you doing, Chris? Your blood's terrible. Triglycerides are up, cholesterol's up." I go through my whole diet with her. She goes, "You can't eat coconut. It's saturated fat." And everybody thinks that this or that is healthy for you. But I would not have known had I not been doing what you mentioned, Justin, the testing, but also knowing what was right for my body. So
Yep.
what's right for someone may not be what's right for you. And this is why we're having you on the show, because if you don't take care of your health, it doesn't no matter how it doesn't matter how successful you are, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can't perform the best that you can. So, Justin, your book's about to come out, The Power of Ownership. Redeem Your Health, Live Life by Design, Break the Relentless Pursuit of Normal. I love that. In it, and I want to tell everybody how to get the book, but one thing I want to talk to you about before we let you go, this myth of normal. I'll never forget. I had this realization one day. I'll never forget the day. And I was talking to this professional. I was working for a medical company at the time. I looked at her and I said, name's Marcia. And I said, Marcia, I said, you know what dawned on me? Nobody really wants to be normal. And that's when I read the myth of normal. I want to know what that is in your book, Justin. But I came to that realization. I'll never forget that day. It changed my life from then forward. What is the myth of normal?
So the myth of normal when it comes to what I speak about in the book
Yeah.
is that the way that we're operating in everyday life today, it's normal to have diabetes. It's normal to have a cancer diagnosis. It's normal to wake up and have a muffin for breakfast. It's normal to um, have cereal for dinner. It's normal to take in sugar 7, 8, 9 times a day. It's normal to be okay watching Netflix all night, but not okay to go and hit the gym or the sauna as a date night. It's the things that are normal, that our world has told us are normal, are backwards and upside down. And if you want true health, as I call it, you have to be willing to do things differently. And so what I do in the book is I put normal against the dichotomy of different. And how do these two ways of living go up against one another? And what does a life of normal look like? And what does a normal of, or what does a life of different look like? And then give people the power to choose, give people the power to take ownership or normal or different. And I mean, at the end of the book, everybody's going to choose different because that's what we've been made for. We've been differently. You've been made uniquely. You've been made to do something great. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to do things differently, there's no way that you can realize the different results and the different outcomes that you've already been prepared for. It's just you've been failing to prepare yourself for it.
I love that. I love that. Justin, what's the best way for the audience to get a copy of your book?
Yeah, so you can find it at thepowerofownershipbook.com is the easiest place in which to find it. You can get access to all the pre-ordered things that will only be available for another week, which is early access to Alt, 4 or 5 different live events with myself, and some really cool things that we've got going on. So thepowerofownershipbook.com is where you can find that. And then any desire to get in touch with us in any bigger way is ownitcoaching.com.
Love it. Ownitcoaching.com, thepowerofownershipbook.com, and ownittesting.com. We'll have all this in the show notes. Justin, I can say unequivocally, you have changed the lives of myself and my wife, Jessica, for the better. I'm grateful to have you in our lives as friends, you and Elise, and I wish you all the best with your book. And if you were listening, I encourage you to check it out. Check out Justin's website, check out his new book, get a copy, get access to all the gifts out there that he's given you guys and all the knowledge to help you own it, own your life, and be better. Justin, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with the audience today.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, Chris here again. I hope you found this episode valuable. Now, I have one more thing to gift you. We have a page for my coaching clients where you can get a free copy of my book, as well as much more from previous guests on the show. Just check out nextlevelincome.com/coaching to get a free copy of my book, audiobook, and much more. I'll send you a copy of my book and cover all the shipping costs as a thank you for listening to the podcast. Also, please like, share, and take just 90 seconds to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts.